Hey guys, this is Joe from Good Shepherd Training. Today I just wanted to make a short video that discussed active shooter or active killer situations. In 2013, the FBI published a research that went back to the year 2000, which they found 160 shootings that they classified as an active shooter. That was 11.4 a year, or roughly one a month during that time period, that accounted for 1,043 casualties being either killed or wounded. Some of the characteristics of these active shooter situations could lead to some reasonable responses by concealed weapon carriers or off-duty police. Some of these characteristics are gun-free zones. More often than not, the person commits suicide. It's many times that they are individual shooters or single persons, and there's a disparity in numbers of killed to wounded, which I'll discuss more here shortly. The gun-free zone, such as Aurora, Colorado, Virginia Tech, Fort Hood, and Sandy Hook, accounted for 84 deaths by themselves, and those were the four worst shootings during that time period, all being a gun-free zone. It's a target-rich environment. It's where the killer's first going to find, on a list of things he wants to find in a place to go and do these killings. It seems like more often than not, gun-free zone is first on that list, which who can blame them? It's just shooting fish in a barrel. All but two, or 1.25%, were individual shooters. So 98.75% of the time when there was an active shooter situation, it was one lone gunman. So this notion that one individual can't stop him, I think, is up for debate. 1 in 3, or 1/3, commit suicide on the scene. Many more committing suicide later on, once they've escaped or once they've gotten off of the position which they've actually committed this violence. So many times if you confront them, they're going to kill themselves. Not always, but that is the ultimate goal. Many times they're just haven't contributed to society, girls don't like them, and they're just scumbags. They know it, you know it, we all know it, but that's their chance to get their more than 15 minutes of fame through social media and through mainstream media and these large media outlets. They go through their names, their families, their histories, and they get their name out, and that's their way to make a mark on society. Whether it be famous or infamous, for some reason they think that is a success. Roughly 500 were killed in these incidents, these 160 incidents that they researched. 550 were wounded, roughly. Now, of that, it was actually 557. Of that 550 or so, many of them were wounded, or a large portion of them were wounded by the shooter, obviously, but there were a lot that actually jumped out of second-story buildings, are injured by shrapnel and all that type of thing, so not all were shot. But the 500 to 550 ratio that I'm discussing, or the 1 to 1.1, I say is a major disparity. Reason being is because roughly 3,500 U.S. soldiers were killed, or U.S. service members were killed during the Iraq War, where 32,200 were wounded. That's a 1 to 9.5 or so ratio, as opposed to a 1 to 1.1, which leads me to believe that the active shooter is actually hyper-focused or hyper-oriented on individual victims as he gets closer, and he kills them at close range. These aren't excellent marksmen, which is what these numbers might indicate to some, and what it indicates to me is they're actually just killing people that are begging for their lives, not seeking cover, not actually moving off the point of attack, which we'll talk about how that can be advantageous to a first responder here shortly. The biggest thing you hear about during these situations are, I want to get safe and I want to get out of there and I don't want to get involved, and that certainly can be understandable with today's sue-happy society and some of the legalities and all those things that could take place. But certainly if it was my family, I would hope that someone would get involved, and if it was your family, I'm sure you would hope that myself or an off-duty police officer or someone that was trained or had the adequate amount of hardware to dispel the situation would do it. So I want to talk about that a little bit. The third flight during 9/11, Flight 93. The first two flights, they thought they could wait, there'd be a ransom, they'd ask to get flown out to their country, fill in the blank, and that they would be safe. The third flight, I think they knew that just wasn't going to be the case. And while they gave their lives, Todd Beamer, let's roll, they gave their lives. There's a tremendous amount of debate as to how many lives they actually saved. There's no telling. I mean, and there were tons of guys there and women and that contributed to taking the flight down, as opposed to letting them conduct their mission, and they actually they made heroes of themselves. So I would say you may find yourself where you have to get involved, and certainly you would want to have enough gun. Many of these active shooters, while they have a handgun and they're in that target-rich environment, Many of them have body armor, or they have a long gun, which, you know, if you have a pistol and they have a rifle or shotgun, of course you're, you know, a little behind as far as the force. But these people feel that they have a monopoly of force, which I think will actually work in your favor at first. I think a reasonable person would say you'd want to seek cover, and of course all of these steps could be done at the same time, or maybe in order. But this is kind of the research that I've done, and the advice that I've gotten from some people, and asking around and looking into the subject. This seems to be kind of the natural order of things. Of course, you'd want to seek cover, you get behind something they couldn't shoot through if possible, if you weren't actually the one being fired on. You want to develop the situation, get as much information as possible for when you do call first responders, and to ensure that that is in fact what you're dealing with. You know, not to overlook and to, you know, get yourself in danger, but to get as much information as possible, because you're going to be calling 911 here shortly. Of course, if you have a family member, you're going to want to get them out of harm's way, and you have a certain level of responsibility to them as opposed to strangers, and you may want to get them out of there. And you may be calling 911 during this time. Of course, if you're armed and you are going to get involved, I would think that it would be reasonable to give your description to the, you know, person on the other end of the phone, and have them actually repeat it back to you, so that you know that hopefully that information will get to those first responders. You know, your description, the fact that you have a weapon, and the fact that you're going to be getting involved with the situation if that's what if that's your plan. I wouldn't draw a weapon certainly, and run through an active shooter situation with a weapon drawn, because there may be another concealed weapon carrier to mistake you as the actual shooter, or first responders, or an off-duty police officer. So I wouldn't, once I got my family safe, I certainly wouldn't go running around with a weapon. But now a reasonable person could say that you would take some cover and concealment, and kind of ease up to the person with your firearm. Maybe you have a grip on your firearm to make sure you have positive control of it with all the commotion and things that are going on. Now, again, let's get back to the disparity in the number of people that are killed versus the number of people that are wounded. When you start putting in the people that actually got hurt trying to escape, trying to jump out of buildings, you might be looking at almost a 1-to-1 ratio, which means half the people that were shot were killed. And that's a pretty big number if you start doing some research into shootings and war and things of that nature. You may actually find that you know, staying still, hiding, begging for your life certainly isn't going to help you, but staying still and hiding may not be the best route either. It may be just to get as far away as possible, as quickly as possible. And of course, in the past, they've locked back doors and they've chained buildings, and like in the Virginia Tech shooting, that they're actually going to stop your avenue to escape. And they know that they've got a little bit of time before the law enforcement officers or the first responders get there, where they have the monopoly of force, which is going to play into your favor. They're over-oriented, or they're over-focused on the individual people that they're killing. Why shoot someone at 50 yards running when you can shoot someone at 10 yards begging for their life? And that's what these people are doing, is they're closing the distance, and they're killing these people. So if someone were to take a cover and concealed route and get either to their flank or to their rear, and I wouldn't think this is a drop your gun or I'll shoot, or a stop or I'll shoot situation. I would think a reasonable person would think that there is imminent danger. They certainly have the opportunity and the willingness to hurt and kill people. I would think it would be time to engage at that time. I would go ahead and say that you know, get to a position where you could take good, accurate shots and possibly take those shots. Try to put the person down, try to stop the threat. Now, once that was done, I would try to break the tunnel vision, look around, make sure there's not a second threat. Although it's highly unlikely, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. So then I would probably say reload, holster the weapon, get to the person, make sure they're disarmed, and then contact law enforcement. Get back in touch with 911. Maybe you had them on the entire time in your pocket, which may not be a bad idea, because they can be able to hear things and it gets recorded, and you know, things are documented, you know, audio, and let them know again what you look like. Let them know that the person, the active shooter or the subject is shot, and that you think it's over, and start giving as much information as possible as to where in the building it's going on, where these casualties are, the number of casualties, because they're not going to get EMS and all those things. They're not going to get the people in there to patch these people up until it's safe. So you want to let them know that it's safe. Now, of course, they may not trust you, and they may not believe you, and they may think that you're the shooter himself. So you want to get those law enforcement personnel there as quickly as possible. Hands up. Hey, it's over here. I'm the person that's called. I'm on the phone with them. Whatever. Get them over there so they can go through their radio, get through their channels, and let them know that it's safe, so that they will in fact get those EMS workers in there. So you're going to want to report as quickly as possible. So I would say certainly, seek cover and concealment, get the family to safety, call 911, get that surprise attack in, and then continue to report or get back on the line to report would be a reasonable response given the indicators or characteristics that we discussed earlier. I hope you never have to deal with that, and even if you're not a concealed weapon carrier or someone that's dealing with weapons, you should certainly do some research and look into how these things are conducted. That way, if you find yourself in that situation, you could get out of the kill zone or not be a fish in a barrel being shot. Because really all these people are scumbags. These people are losers. They haven't made any type of impact on their own lives or on society, and they haven't made a name for themselves. And rather than be famous or even just a pillar or a contributor to the community, they've decided to be infamous. And that's just that's the route they've gone. And I think a good guy with a gun could stop this bad guy with a gun. Certainly, I certainly hope that you don't ever have to deal with this. But give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. I'm Joe from Good Shepherd Training, and the Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Thanks.